let's get down. Dude, why am I nervous? why am I nervous to start this? All day yesterday I was like, man, how am I going to intro this? Because I still haven't figured out what I'm going to officially call the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. Okay.
Hey, at least your beanie's on point. Or at least it lost its point.
Well, okay. See, that's the question. I'm wondering if by me laughing super loud like that it just spiked. It did a little bit. Okay, so I got to be turned down mine because I can get loud. All right. Well, bro, ready?
Yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode, podcast number 1. It's here in the books.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, come on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am so stoked to be here, and I am even more stoked to have my guest with me. This is a gentleman who not only is my mentor, which is weird because, one thing I was thinking about also this morning is I was like, man, we're going to lock eyes with each other the entire time.
Hey, those blues, though.
Thank you, bro. Your brown eyes look great, too. But guys, yes, this gentleman is a mentor of mine, someone I inspired by, someone who I look up to. Sometimes we just literally go to lunch or he'll come cruise in my office and we will chat for hours about shenanigans. But he has a passion for action sports and automotive. He has 18 years of experience in photography, video, design, communicating the market. His experience has allowed him to create for multiple industries. Please welcome marketer, skateboarder, and Florida rapper Gilbert Gonzalez. Come on.
How you doing?
Claps all around.
Yeah. Thank you so much, brother. It's a blessing, bro. Like, seriously, I know you say mentor, but the one big thing about me is, always being teachable. So whether if it's with somebody older or younger, I've learned a lot from you, too. So.
Well, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah. Although I don't know how much I've been able to teach you in my little years of experience compared to the 18, bro. That's so cool. Yeah. Come on, bro. Well, dude, tell me about yourself. I think the audience, as well as maybe anyone who's listening online, they may not know you as much as I know you.
Yeah.
But dude, tell me a little about yourself. One of the questions I got in here is, what are your passions and interests outside of work? So let's get personal first, as far as before we start talking about some of the marketing and stuff like that.
Well, first of all, I'm a husband and a father.
Come on.
And learning to be a good son also to my own dad. Excuse me.
Getting choked up already. We're on a roll, guys. Here we go.
Right,
come on.
Right. Man. I'm into skateboarding. I'm into fishing. I love the salt water, having that Hawaiian culture behind me.
Come on.
Just anything to do with the ocean, I'm about. In regards to how I got started, there was a time that I lived in Laguna Beach for a while. And I was surrounded by, Laguna Beach is called the city of art, yeah?
Come on, yeah.
So being a young kid in that area, it's it just seemed like everybody had this thing for fine art, and they were all able to draw or paint or sculpt. And for me, I had none of it, you know what I mean? So it was kind of a struggle because visually I was oh man, why can't I do what they do? In some cases, I would get close, but it just took a lot of practice and a lot of effort. But some people were just whatever, here it is. Check this out. It's a masterpiece,
For real.
But it wasn't until my first photography class in college that the first day this instructor did a test to kind of see where we were at skill-wise, but this is how we see photography, And I'll never forget that he's reading through them. And then he just calls my name randomly. And he goes, Gilbert. And I'm just all right, here we go.
Right.
He goes, you say that you see pictures before you see real life. He's explain that. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I was I don't know. It's just been like this since I was a kid, that if I'm out in the world and I'm looking at stuff, I see him as photographs before reality. So seeing you in a cup and this phone, I see that as a frame.
Right. I'm the exact same way. That's interesting that you say that.
Before, and then it kicks into reality. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So what he said was well, what you have is what they call a photographic eye. And right there, I was the blessing came. I was oh my gosh, this whole time I've been struggling.
God's given you a purpose there.
Yeah. So then I was oh, so that's what it is. It's as easy as that. So then that's when, I kind of proceeded with photography to kind of get me to where I'm at today, like it literally all started with photography. So photography, of course, having that influence from my upbringing, and then of course always having a desire to grow, right? In being surrounded by uncles and aunties that, you know, went to higher education, but it just necessarily didn't feel like my path. But like something that my dad always told me, he's like, you know, school is not necessary to learn the subject. It's to teach you how to learn. If you learn how to learn, then it doesn't matter what you apply yourself to, you'll be able to achieve. Right. So with that, I always took that into consideration. So I was like, okay, you know, like hitting a point in photography, I was like, okay, so what can I do now with it? And then I was like, oh, like it'd be cool to like do collages in like of my photography. And then at the time I started working a little deeper in the automotive industry, and my boss at the time, multiple hat guy, he would also do ads, cataloging and all that stuff. So then he started utilizing that concept that I had, and that like he was like using me. He's like, Gilbert, can you like lay out this page and like the text over here? And I was like, it was just an easy process because it was just like the next step. Right. Later on, I get involved into the magazine industry. In that point, I'm starting to see from the backside and the front side, like ads, like ad creative created by the house, and then ad creative that's coming in from the particular brands, right, that want to advertise. And then I'm seeing how they lay things out, you know. So I was like, oh, well, I want to get into graphic design. Right. So that's the next step. It's
cool.
Like understanding like, oh, cool. Like there is a way to lay out. Now I'll say like there is a difference between fine art graphic design and graphic design for advertising I've understood. Right. So like I've always placed myself back in class and like say an illustration class. And you always had like half the class that were like fine art students that would do stuff that was very creative and rad. Right. But it wasn't made to appeal to the audience in regards to making a decision. The other half would be more of an advertising production artist style, where your design was because I was trying to make you do something, a behavior, right? So like, for instance, here in America, we read left to right, top to bottom, right? So you essentially, you have a box in regards to layout and composition, right? So your upper left would be your hot spot. Okay. Your upper right would be a cool spot. Your bottom left would be a cold spot, and then back to your bottom right would be a hot spot again. So you're making a Z, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So that's why, like, if you ever notice in ads, whether if it's digital or print, you'll notice that your headline or your catch is usually on the upper left. Your second,
that does make sense.
Your second view is usually on the right. Your logo or your brand is usually on the bottom left, because the ad is from the brand, but you're not trying to push a logo. Right. And then your call to actions on the bottom right, which is like the most important, right?
Dude, that's crazy. It's interesting you say that, because I've seen, you know, now thinking back and looking at newspapers, magazines, different ads or whatever it is, I'd notice that. But I never like internally knew that. So it's like, there's so many times like, oh yeah, I guess I am going to buy this new iPhone because the call to action was like very, you know, grabbed to me. You know, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes like even in digital, like they'll avoid the cold spots and just go hot to hot. So you'll just see like upper left, bottom right. You know what I mean? Same thing with like product photography. So we read left to right, top to bottom. So your product should be facing right. So when you're doing your three-quarter shots, the face of the product should be facing the right. Why? Because that's just how we read.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and also if it's whether it's print magazine or if it's just like, say, something online that you can actually swipe or flip through, you're gonna flip this way to the left, right? So naturally, if it's facing to the right, it's going to make you want to go to the next page or to proceed on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
come on, dude, that's actually crazy. I cannot believe that I guess I've been a fool in their game in the sense where I've never noticed that. Yeah. But at the same time, I've absolutely been drawn in by something and then gone through and then, oh yeah, I'm totally buying this product.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun thing about like when you think about 2D design, like when I took that class, there's an emphasis on psychic line. Psychic line is like emphasis in composition to make your eyes go somewhere.
Wow.
Right? Whether if it's a little kid in the photo that's pointing, it's going to make you look. Or if it's just the shape of an object or a graphic or a line, that's going to make you go on this like visual journey.
Wow.
Right? So yeah, it's just a lot of fun stuff. So with that, like graphic design, and then just working with magazines, and I started to become a production artist from skateboard industry, automotive industry, doing designs, doing reissues for old skateboards, like for one company, to just doing ad layout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from there, of course, it's like, okay, cool. Like you're creating this content, you're creating these materials, right? From photography to design to it being like published in a sense, whether if it's print or digital.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, well, wanting to always learn and progress, it's like, well, now what? Like, what can I do with that?
Right.
Or what are people doing with that? Right.
Right.
And then I started to realize, oh, well, they're communicating it to the world. They're marketing it. Right. So they're taking all that perspective. They're getting, all that material. And now it's like, okay, now let's distribute it.
Wow. That's
Right.
good.
And that's where essentially in a like very quick way, I've landed where I am today. It's just, focusing on what is best for the client, and not my portfolio, if that makes sense.
Dude, that's a nugget right there. I feel like a lot of people don't do. I feel like sometimes I even have to catch myself doing that, where it's like, okay, well, I know, like maybe there's this project. It's like, okay, well, I know that it could, if I put in this amount of work or I do this specifically, it will look really good in my portfolio.
Yeah.
Because I'm always, you're in a place where you're older than me, where I'm always looking to grow, right?
Yeah,
and I know
yeah,
you
yeah.
are too, but like I'm like, man, I'm 24 years old. I want to see what's next for me, and so I want to create things to be able to show for the next recruiter, know? And so I have to catch myself sometimes of being the same way. It's like, okay, look, I know that this is dope. I know this is trending. I know that this is going to look really good.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, is this specific sweatshirt, is this thing I'm designing, this graphic, is this catered to our audience?
Yes.
Is this best for the company? They can make sales from this thing,
Absolutely. Oh, dude, great point. Sales. Like we're too busy. We spend too much time marketing in regards to like likes and engagement. But really, marketing is just to get revenue.
Come on, yeah.
Right. That's at the end of the day. It's about sales. It's about that conversion. It's that buy now button or whatever. You know what I mean? So, but to your point is, like if you focus more on just being a good steward, right? You walk in with your skill set and your talent, and to say, look, I need to do what is best for the client. So the client already has a vision, your client or employer, right? They have this vision. And the more you do your best, utilizing your skills to market for that vision organically, naturally, you're going to create amazing content that is worthy for your portfolio. And the great thing about that is that you're doing something that you truly care about. And whenever you do something you care about, it ends up being the best work, right? Like think about stuff that you don't really care about. I can think back like when I was more of a production artist, like being a production artist, they really teach you how to not be emotionally involved with your work.
We talked about this a little bit too before and
So
passed about stuff.
So it's like even when I was doing like skateboard graphics, right? It's like you'll come out with a 6 series and you're so involved and you're like, dude, this is it. Like I spent hours into it, like they're gonna love it. And they look at it like 2 minutes and they're just like, nah, it's not gonna work.
Oh,
right,
yeah, dude, that's my worst nightmare.
Right, and then they walk out, and you're just like destroyed.
Right,
you're like, oh, it's lunchtime, I have to go.
You know what I mean? Right.
So, but with production art, it was more like, don't get involved. Just do your best work, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. Keep going. Right. So then over time, I learned like, okay, here's a series. Don't like it? Okay, what do you not like, and what do you like? Optimization. Right?
Good word.
I took those bullet points, boom, I created a new series. Now let's optimize this. Do you like it? Optimize. And to the point they're like, dude, this is it.
This is it. Yeah.
Right? So if you can get in the mindset of not being so personally involved when it comes to production art, right?
Right.
There's times where you should get emotional and get personally involved into your work.
Right.
But if the job calls for production, done is better than perfect. what you may think needs to be perfect to the client, to the audience, they don't see it. Right? So it's just about getting it done and delivery, right?
Yeah.
So delivery is a big one. Like if you have a deadline, meet it. Or, like I one time heard from a good friend, his name is Wayne Williams. He always say under promise and over deliver.
Right.
Right?
Especially in our field.
Yeah. Give yourself margin. There's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, dude. And you know what I think, going back to kind of something you had said earlier, that separates, like the emotion involved in your artwork is what separates between someone, let's say, who does marketing and advertising versus a fine art person, right? Fine art, like you're saying, all the people in Laguna Beach, bro, they all have spent time, and they're like, this splat of paint really tends to my heart, in this type of way, you know what I mean? It's something that's like so different versus in our industry where it's like, yeah, we can't get, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely been times where it's like, I've gotten emotional into something I've made and it turned out sick and exactly what they wanted, the business wanted, but at the same time, it's not all the time. It's super rare that happens, So dude, but kind of continuing with the conversation, you have all this experience, you've done all these different things, you've jumped from doing this thing to this project to this thing. What would you say is like maybe your top, like, oh yeah, that was my favorite project to work on. It was just awesome that I was able to create this thing.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate in the automotive industry to actually do a lot of passion work. And what I mean by passion work is like stuff that's like similar. So to give you an idea of like how I got into automotive, like my father is a mechanic. And
actually, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Maybe I did. Because you guys are fixing up a boat right now or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So anyways, so I've been around that. And at an early age, I was able to rebuild an engine with him, or see the practices of repair, right? So that kind of just really like interested me. And then, of course, as I got into my later teens, early 20s, now I will say this is before Fast and the Furious.
Come on.
Because Fast and the Furious did something bad and good, I guess. But before Fast and the Furious, I was really into just building cars for my generation. So my dad was really into, small blocks, V8s, classic cars, all that stuff, Mustangs and stuff. And for my generation at the time, plus because of skateboarding, a lot of the skateboarders at the time were into Hondas. Right?
Gotta love it. It's true.
It's true though, right? It's
really
like
is.
who did not own a Civic and skated?
Yeah,
like
for
it
sure.
was just like
sometimes throw the hatchback. You know what I mean?
Exactly, that's what I had.
Come on.
So I had a '92 Honda Civic hatchback SI. That was like my favorite, and I had a Type R motor in it. But anyways, yeah. So like,
I'm acting as if I knew what that meant. Well, guys, I have no idea what that meant. But
so
cool.
yeah. So for my generation, that's what I got into. I got into building my own engines and doing hybrids where it would be like a head from a certain engine and then a block from another and putting them together to make a better performing engine or whatever,
Right.
So that's how I kind of got into the whole automotive scene, and then slowly just building a lot of friends and being in the community from Vegas to California. There was just a lot of opportunity, and because of the knowledge of taking college courses in automotive. So there was a short time that I went to school for automotive to be a dealership mechanic.
Oh, cool.
So I got to the point of the curriculum where we had to be dealership mechanics. And then I was just like, I was kind of bothered by the culture and I didn't want to proceed with it. So I did all the classes up to that point of like being, and yeah, it's just a long story, but, that's why I kind of veered off, but knowledge will always go with you.
Amen.
Certificate or not,
true.
right?
Right.
Certificate or not,
right?
You will realize that nothing's a waste, right? Sometimes you'll think like, oh, I failed or whatever and all that stuff, but failure doesn't define you; it refines you, right?
Come on, fire, bro. This guy's dropping nuggets left and right, man. I got so many Instagram reels and YouTube shorts off of this.
So like I said, with that, I was able to get involved in the automotive industry. I was able to get those jobs because of my experience in automotive, and then my also real life experience racing and building engines. So
Dang, you race too.
yeah, so this is kind of circling back to where I was going with this, is that in regards to passion projects, I was able through a good friend and an old boss. His name was Greg Gill. He ran a magazine called TPR Magazine, Tune and Performance Racing, and he saw me usable for a few things. Like he would use me for photography. He would use me for writing. So I would write articles. I would do interviews. But then he was like, what are your thoughts on being a test pilot since you have experience racing?
Yeah.
In the grassroots level, what if I was to help you go to school?
Wow.
Yeah, so he would hook me up with the right people. At the time, Robbie Montanola was one of his test pilots, but also worked for the magazine, who ended up being my coach.
Wow. Dude, this is crazy. I didn't know all this.
Yeah, so he ended up being my coach at Skip Barber Racing. So with that, I was able to inherit all these great things. I mean, my passion was like, don't get me wrong, I loved building and the whole soothing process of building cars and stuff like that. But the reality is, for me, it was all about racing, right? It was all about the end result. So to talk about like a great project that I really enjoyed and created is, I can say, it's just a collection of projects where I was able to work with a team, and whether if it's directing or just being at their side, where we would have this whole production shoot with video and photography. And it just so happens that I was able to drive.
Dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because there was also, is this the same one that I remember last year? So something that Gilbert does is he helps out at SEMA. His company currently works for, he's contracted with. They have a booth at SEMA. Is that that company? Because or that just happened to also be another instance where you got to you got to be on their advertisement driving the car.
Yeah. No, one of the companies that we work with have a group of brands that they're over, and we have an opportunity to create content for them, and a lot of it has to do around the tire industry.
Right.
So because it's tires, we have to test, and usually with testing, it involves a lot of performance driving.
Right.
So I've been super blessed to be behind the steering wheel and to just kind of zone out, and also like, I realize like there's a lot of trust involved, right? Because you think about like some of these builds are expensive.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one accident, know?
Yep.
But to build up that trust, which again, here comes back to experience, and nothing's a failure, right? It's because of my prior experience and education that led me to this point where the client trusts me with their vehicle and getting behind the steering wheel and going all out, you know what I mean?
Right.
For the sake of content.
Yeah, and let me tell you guys, maybe I should have put on his, I was announcing a model, because like, yeah, dude, I forgot that you modeled a couple of these videos. It's so sick. But dude, question for you, as far as like, you're talking about going, starting in one industry and then kind of jumping to another one, and like, from skateboarding to automotive, and although you had a passion necessarily for it, like, how difficult was it for you to go from one industry to something completely different? Because although you may have the same skill set, right, you're doing the marketing and the advertising and stuff like that. Like, I think that, something I found, and, this is great for really anyone who is in that process of like, man, okay, maybe maybe I am a graphic designer, and it's like, I want to switch from doing real estate, advertisement to now I really want to go into clothing, So like, what's some like insights or some nuggets, some wisdom, like on that process, and maybe you could share too how, if it was difficult at all for you, if there's a learning curve or anything to it.
Yeah. So when I think about that, I think about brand, right? Brand or personal brand. What makes a brand, right? Is it the brand itself, the person itself, or is it the processes, the templates, right? The strategy that is happening behind the scenes? Because without those, what is a brand? Think about that, right?
Bring it down to the roots.
So now think about yourself. Like, if you're thinking about, okay, I'm in this industry, but I wanted to go to this other industry. Now, there is a level of living out that industry, right? Some employers or clients prefer that it or you live it out yourself. But with that, sometimes it's more on the idea of company culture, more so than being in the industry. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like within your own group, if you fit, then that's more important than how smart or how skillful you are. So with that, when it comes to transitioning, always have confidence in the idea of your process, your strategy, your experience, and your education. Okay. So, and always remember that just because let's just say that you're in the automotive industry and you're doing all this work and you're like, well, how am I going to do it for, I don't know, the electronics industry? Well, essentially, if you step back, it's the same thing.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like, it doesn't matter what product or service you have in front of you. Behind the scenes, it's still the same process. It's still the same strategies, right? It requires the same amount of effort. You know, there's still the same amount of considerations, you know, considering the omni-channel for that individual brand or company, right? Like what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So you're taking all that same skill set and now you're just applying it to the different industry, right?
I see.
So yeah, that's the biggest point for me is like for anybody who's been involved in the industry for a short time or even a long time, it's like always remember that it doesn't matter what product or service is in front of you. It's still the same. It's still the same practices. So
Yeah, dude, that makes sense. And I think that, you know, I have seen that within my own life. Just as you're saying, where like there's a lot of times where you just need to pull the skills. I mean, you're developing the skills in one area. You know, maybe it's the food industry. You know, and you're just taking those skills and now applying it to the next one you're in. It may be a different industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, I love that. And so being in the automotive industry, though, okay, what are some strategies that you found to be most effective in marketing automotive products, services? Because I feel like it is so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you think of like, again, advertising clothing or maybe you're advertising a new lawnmower, that is drastically different than automotive.
For sure.
So yeah, what's some strategies that you found to be effective in marketing it?
Well, I can say with automotive, I mean, we'll just say that they're a little bit slow to the market in regards to
the customers, or you're saying the industry itself?
The industry and marketing.
Oh, okay.
They'll tend to be a little bit slower. There's a lot of generational gaps. So
Interesting.
practices are, you know, those who evolved with the market and with the trends tend to be better or do better, right? So what I found that's working today is personalization. And the reason why is just because we've been bombarded with digital, right?
Right.
Now we're getting bombarded with AI.
Right.
So now what people want to invest in, and I think that what they've always wanted to invest in is people want to invest in people, right? So how can you bring that concept back? And I think with the automotive industry, they have survived a lot on being faceless brands. Now there's some smaller brands or companies or that will have that spokesperson or that one person that you identify, right? And it's almost to the point that you see them before you see the automotive brand.
Right.
But that takes a lot of work. That's a big investment, right? And that's a lot of trust, right? So with other brands, I just noticed that, you know, they spend more time on product and not enough time on considering the consumer.
Interesting. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
You know, so that before you know it, when you look into, let's say, a magazine or if you're going to a show, you start to see like a lot of the same stuff. Because it's like, well, a lot of them don't want to get out of that comfort zone, right? They're just like, well, you know, we'll just create some ads. We'll have them laid out this way, use the same colors that we've always used.
Right.
You know, there's this thing in automotive industry, black and red. Like I swear everything is black and red, right?
It's my favorite colors, so
Yes.
you know I'm not upset about it.
Yeah, so like because of that, like what I do for my client in order to be different and to strategize, it's like, well, you know, I want to say when I took one of my classes, I think they call it flanker design. I could be wrong.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much what it means is that let's just say that if we're looking at an aisle of merchandise, right? And if you see that all of them are red, make yours blue.
You're right.
right?
Catches the eye.
Yeah. It stops the eye.
Right. Oh, it's a good point.
Yeah. So same thing. So with all the black and red that's been going on, and and some of it was even black and orange. You know, one of the people that I work with, her name is Alicia Rodriguez. She's a fine artist, amazing at what she does.
Come on.
I mean, I'm talking.
Come on, Alicia. I don't know you, but hey, Gilbert's talking about you. You got to be phenomenal. So kudos to you.
She's the creative director for the agency I work with.
Wow, cool.
But she just has that eye. She has that Laguna mixed with that.
Wow, that's cool.
That production,
right,
or that selling point. You know what I mean? That advertising style. So she was just like, well, let's do this with this new brand. Let's start doing ads in white and green, like this. Like it's kind of like almost like a fluorescent green.
Wow.
And when you would see the advertise, like you would just flip through the magazine, like if you just like quickly flipping through it, like it would just stop you every time. You know what I mean? Even in the digital side, like there was just a lot of black and gold, black and red, and all of a sudden, boom, you hear this fresh, white, clean canvas with proper text, with proper photography, proper graphics, and great color palette. Like, I mean, that's what gets me excited.
Come on.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. So question for you. In that, like in the different colors and different things that you're seeing when you're flipping these things, they're flipping through the magazines. Is that where most of automotive industry is? The marketing's in the magazines and the newspapers, or is there? Because I mean, you've just mentioned that a couple times. Is that is there more stuff on digital, or is it really like you're saying where they're still a step behind, that they're still throwing into magazines and newspapers?
I would say in most cases, my perspective is that they're just slower. Like they are starting to catch up and add to their marketing package. They are doing print and digital now. You know what I mean? I think the disconnect that a lot of these brands have is that they're focused on multi-channel advertising instead of omni-channel advertising. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So multi-channel advertising is doing advertising in all these different channels, but none of them are working together. Omni-channel is having multiple channels that are strategic, but they all work together. They all complement each other, and they all speak to each other. So that when the consumer views it, right, they know that it's all from the same company, right? And they say in order to get a loyal customer, they have to engage with you 7 times.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So if your omni-channel is on point, there's your opportunity to engage with them 7 times and potentially make a customer or have a loyal customer.
Right. Come on, bro. Okay, so now let's say someone is trying to enhance their branding and their customer engagement through their marketing in, let's just say, the automotive industry.
Yeah.
How would they do that? What would you suggest as someone who consults, right, who comes in? What were maybe some of the, like, oh, this is something that's got to change, for your company to help promote, especially within our day and age, because they're a step behind?
Yeah. I would ask them, like, how can you personalize your brand? Analyze what you've been doing, for however many years, and what is it that you can do to optimize. Now, it doesn't have to be this big leap. It can just be a step forward, right? And what is it that you can do that is different so that you can disrupt the market? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can be in a pool, let's just say like in the automotive industry, right? For a particular brand, like let's just say the tire industry, right? They're all in a pool, right? And essentially, I always joke around, like, let's think about tires. They're just black circles, right? On ad,
right.
On digital, it's just a black circle. So how do you make it look pretty? How do you make it look appealing? Why you do that by focusing on benefits that are personalized. People features are cool, right? But features don't sell, benefits sell.
Come
right?
on.
The difference is features is like, oh, it has cool lettering on the side. You can flip it on one side and it's a white wall. You can flip it on the other side, it's black.
Right.
But benefits are in rainy conditions. It has a silica compound. Because it has a silica compound,
right,
you'll be able to recover if you were to slowly spin out, or you'll be able to stop sooner in ice or water. Now,
Right,
how
right.
comforting is that when you're traveling with your family?
Right.
See,
Right.
see how different that is
100%.
than to say, hey, look, check out this cool tire. It's black,
Right.
and it has
Right.
cool flames on the side.
Right.
So,
And that's interesting you say that because actually I literally just saw a graphic on LinkedIn yesterday, and it was ironic because of Mario, but it was like of Mario, and then it had next to it was like a plus, and then there was like the little fire flower thing that he has, and it was talking about that. It was talking about like you have to have both the product and the benefit to be able to accomplish sales. You can't just have the product because the product itself is not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And you can't just have the benefit. It has to be both. You have
Sure.
to be able to show both and execute pretty much like perfectly to the audience for them to buy.
yeah, and if you think about it, the product and service, that is the follow through, meaning all the marketing you do, campaign, strategy, planning, calendar, education, all that. If the product and service is not good, there's going to be a fallout.
Right.
And product and service is the follow through. You do all this great work, you do all this awareness, you fight for engagement, but if the product and service is not good, there's a fallout. Secondly, product and service can be good, but if your landing page or your customer service
So important.
is not, cohesive, then there's a fallout there
Right.
in regards to your follow through.
Right.
Right, so it has to all work. Nothing can stand alone these days. It has to all work. Right, the journey to sale has to be enjoyable and seamless from start to finish. From the time that I saw that ad to the time that I decided to call, to the time I decided to drive into that parking lot, to the time I decided to open that door and see any kind of, advertising on my journey in the store, to the counter, to the salesperson, to the final transaction.
Come on.
All of it has to work together,
Right. Right.
or all the effort you do, tends to fall out. So,
Cool, dude. When something you had talked about a little bit ago is you kind of briefly had mentioned the idea of AI, and just kind of in the new world that we're in where there is just so many different types of AI. In fact, actually the podcast will be edited by an AI called Autopod,
Yeah.
where it's like, which honestly is super great. But, in a world where now AI is so prevalent and it's becoming almost easier to do things, how do people who are photographers, graphic designers, videographers, these people who are doing what we do, we design, we create these different things, we edit, where AI now is becoming something where it is making or turning projects that could have taken, me hours into seconds. And then as you're someone who is contracted, right? Like explaining to someone who's hiring you or asking you to contracting you,
yeah.
to be like, hey, I'm better than the AI that you could pay $10.99 for, and here's why. So I'd love to kind of jump into that a little bit and talk about, maybe some of your thoughts on that.
Well, let's take this podcast right now. At the end of this podcast, even though you're going to use AI, will AI finish it?
Dang, no, they will not.
Right?
Right.
So it still needs humans to finish the last mile.
Dude, what a word, bro. What a word. It's true.
Yeah. So the way I see AI is think about a really good assistant that you hired or a really good intern, right? They're really good at what they do, but the reality is you still have to manage and oversee and finalize it. And I think that's the future of AI. I don't think, in my opinion, and what I've heard and seen from other people in the industry, in the marketing industry, I don't think it's ever going to replace. And here's the reason why I say that. It will always be a really good assistant to help you be more efficient at your job.
Right.
But what it lacks is personalization, personal experience, right? Personal stories. Those details AI cannot do, right? So if I was to say, to type into AI to help me create a blog about you, right? And it's going to go through your history online. It's going to go through your Instagram. It's going to go through everything.
There you go, man.
Right? And
got some selfies from 7th grade on there. They're going to be looking at, you know?
And it's going to create a summary, right? But the thing is with that summary is that it's going to be very generic in the sense that there is no personalization of it. There's no details. And it's those details, kind of like in this podcast, like just talking to one another, investing in people to people, that's where it will never probably proceed or surpass human interaction. Does that make sense?
For sure.
Especially in a time when you think about the culture in regards to the different generations, even the younger generation, even though they've been so bombarded with digital to the point that it's been affecting their behavior, affecting their psychology.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Affecting their social interaction in the world. That I'm slowly starting to see a wave of kids that are putting down their devices.
Wow.
Right? They're doing these things called social detox, where they'll like pause their account or delete their account.
Right.
So they can focus on human to human interaction. Right? They're going to coffee shops. They're reading books. Right? Tangible things. Right?
That's crazy.
And that's crazy, right?
I don't even read books anymore.
Well, here's the funny thing. Like, whenever I think about like books or magazines, I always think about back to my old friend, boss, Greg Gill. He always says the pictures you remember are the pictures you hold.
Dang, come on.
Right?
It's true.
And it's so true. To this day, you can flip and swipe to the point where you're like, oh, what was that cool photo? And it's like, it's lost. Good luck trying to find it. But if you had a solid photo book, right, you can flip through that and you're just like, oh yeah, you can constantly revisit it, right?
Come on. Yeah.
And then you'll remember it.
Yeah.
So
dude, come on. And I think that it's very interesting in the world we live with AI, and I love that you touched on that, because even in my own life, as I'm saying, this podcast is being edited by an AI, you know? It's that, like, I love that you specifically mentioned that it's not going to be something that takes over, but something that's going to assist.
For sure.
I think that's really important, you know? And we've had tons of dialogue about this, right? Just about how it can assist us in our normal life, right? For example, like one of our buddies, great guy named Nathan, he uses AI certain times to edit certain things.
Yeah.
And that's because, going back kind of something you were saying before, production, right, where there's constantly projects that we are having to work on left and right, he has the ability to throw the projects into this thing to enhance it and make it, almost pretty much done, where he just has to be the start it, finish it kind of things, and then move on to the next project.
Yes.
Keep the flow going. So I love that. Love that you said it was about this system.
Yeah, it's kind of like back to what we always talk about and joke around about labor to value, right?
Literally, guys, if there is one thing that me and Gilbert preach left and right, it's labor to value on everything. Yeah,
and just to touch on that for those who are listening, labor to value means that your labor should never outdo your value, right? Your value should always be higher, and the labor either should be even with it or lower. But if you're doing more labor than the value it's going to produce, you're essentially doing a hobby. Does that make sense? So with that, the same thing with AI, or just having tools to help you not just optimize for your client or your employer, but also for optimizing yourself, right? If you can minimize your labor but still produce the same value or better value, right? That is the optimization and the margin you're looking for. Because not only is it going to create margin for yourself, but when it comes to revenue for your client or employer, it's going to create margin for them, right? Because something that would take 2 days is now only taking a couple hours, right? And that's only because you are adapting to the market and you are utilizing proper tools that make sense. Now, there's a lot of tools out there that I say are like shiny toys, right? That may not work, but always consider. And then if it doesn't, add it to your tool belt or ditch it, right? Kind of the same thing. So, yeah. So if AI is something that will benefit your brand, your employer, your client, then utilize it, right? But like I said, just with everything, it requires human interaction for the last mile.
Right. And something I thought about too while you're saying that is, like, going back to what you said about having a photographic eye, right? The AI doesn't have photographic eye.
Very true.
So it's something where like we may recognize something like, oh man, that is going to work.
Yeah.
You know, because that's just a gifting that the Lord has given us. So it's like, yeah, we have that perspective. We have that shot, you know, the AI can't do that. There's surface level, even as descriptive as you can make, let's say ChatGPT, like even as descriptive as you can make it, it will never be, I think, it'll never be as personal as you're saying, but then also has that eye, that knowledge, you know, that we have.
Yeah. And I think something that I experienced recently on how AI will never replace personalization is that Photoshop came out with this new AI thing, right?
Right.
So you can have an image, and I think they had a sample of it. I think it was like a house.
It's a house in Amsterdam or something like out in the wilderness.
So you can select a house and then tell it to be a certain color, lights on, lights off, tree on the side. Not. So here's the thing: when you type what you want, lights on the house or tree on the side, and I want the house to be green. What you're thinking up here and what it produces is not the same. Why?
So true.
Personalization. The details of personalization, AI will never be able to figure that out.
Wow.
I mean, unless we get into like Terminator.
For real. For real. Dude, that's crazy. Yeah, that's something I also played around with that, you know, that same exact image. And that is interesting because there's so many times, like recently I had a picture where my boss's eye was partially closed.
Yeah.
Perfect picture of him smiling, but the photographer just 1 second too early, you know, 1 second too early. And so I was trying to fix it. And so I was saying, I tried to literally section out just his eye and be like, open eye.
Yeah.
And it came back terrible. Like it literally came back terrible, you know? And I think that, again, like you're saying, in my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to fix it. It's just going to open the eyelid up, open a little bit and fix that. But it didn't.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even be descriptive enough to fix it.
Not to be nerdy or anything, but in regards to Photoshop, I would have totally got the other eye.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
Duplicated it, flipped it.
I tried. I did that.
Place it. Yeah, it didn't work?
No, it didn't work because of the way the angle was. The angle of his face was turned to the little bit to the right.
Yeah.
So it didn't work.
You know, and eyes are funny because if you just off a little bit, they look crossed.
Dude, they look so bad. Yeah, they look so bad. I know. So I ended up having to like scratch it and just try and find another entirely different image. But yeah, dude, it was there was hope there for a second that maybe the Photoshop AI would fix it, but it didn't. But well, dude. Okay, so let's kind of bring this kind of to a close now. You know what I mean? Let's just say you could give some advice to some people out there who are like just starting in the marketing world. Maybe they're even starting in the marketing world for automotive.
Yeah.
You know, what's something that, as you have done this now for the last 18 years, have been in this, well, I guess not in the automotive world, but in general, the world, what's something that you wish you would have known now that you didn't back then that you can bless them with?
I mean, I would just refer back to 2 points that we talked about earlier in this conversation. And the first one is just be teachable, right? It doesn't matter how young or old the person is that's teaching you. It doesn't matter if it's coming from videos or books, but just stay engaged in learning. The more you stay engaged in learning, the more you get to stay with the market, right? And in some ways, oddly enough, you can disrupt the market by just staying more educated. And the reason why I say that is like you'll get a lot of people who try to rank you and say, oh, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, right?
Tell me, story of my life.
But let's think about that. What does that mean?
Right.
Is it 30 plus years of constantly being teachable and learning? Or are you just repeating year 1 30 times? Does that make sense?
For sure. 100%.
Right? So that'll be the one. Just be teachable. Secondly, I would say, just back to when it comes to creating, just, always try to create with your client employer's vision, right?
Right.
Don't get so wrapped up on your bang-in portfolio, right?
Right.
Get more wrapped up on what the customer is trying to do. What is the message that they want to put out into the world, right? Because here's something with that. You're going to be battling clients and employers who are obsessing about their competitors. And your job is to teach them how to obsess about their customers or about their clients or their audience, right? Because the more they can obsess about their audience or their clients or customers, the more they get to understand them. The more you understand, the more you know how to properly talk to them, message to them, right? So with that, focus on that, be a good steward in that.
Right.
And then naturally, as we spoke, you're going to create amazing content for your portfolio.
Right.
Right. So even better. I mean, like I think about, unfortunately, like my portfolio hasn't probably been updated in like, I don't know, 6+ years.
Which is so great because I asked him for a little bio, and actually before this, there was a couple months ago. I was like, "Hey, dude, I'm trying to build my website. What does your website look like so I can like update mine, and to kind of like maybe get a little spoof, make something, spice it up a little bit." And he's all like, "Oh, bro, I have not updated it." And I think when I clicked on it, I think it was like just your resume.
Just text.
It was just text. Yeah, come on, but
I'll say this, like it's been a real blessing in the past 5 years, working with a team, specifically Tim Rodriguez and Alicia Rodriguez are, husband and wife, and I've been working with their son, John Rodriguez, also. We've been onboarding a lot of new people. We have a great team now, but I'll just say like the blessing is that when you finally find that crew,
come on. Yeah.
that crew where you're just so stoked and passionate about what you do that you're not trying to seek elsewhere. Right. And collectively, it's funny because I realize that we're all on that same page. Like when I talk to them, it's like, oh yeah, we need to update our website or we need to update our LinkedIn. And it's like, we've been so involved about making sure that we're living out the customer's brand also, but also making sure that we're fulfilling their vision. And it's not necessarily that like we're becoming employees for the client, but we just care about everything we do. So the result of that is, I don't want to say like we don't have time to build up ourselves. It's just that we're so confident in what we have and how we're growing that we're focusing on serving. Right. Serving others, right?
Right.
So it's a great thing. Sometimes at first I was kind of bummed, like, man, dude, I need to stay on top of this. There's gonna be people visiting,
right,
and all this crazy stuff. But and then I like look at the other side. It's like I appreciate that I am wrapped up helping the client and serving the client the best I can, because essentially when it comes down to it, I wake up every morning thankful, right? Thankful for the mercies and beautiful day the Lord has made. Right. And it's like, Lord, like, let me be successful in this day.
Come on.
But successful not for myself, but successful for them. How can I bless my team?
Yeah.
Which in return, how can I bless our clients?
Come on.
Because that's the day I want to achieve. I want to finish out the day before dinner like stoked that I did a good work, not just for them, but for the Lord. You know what I mean?
Come on.
Because work is worship, essentially, if you do it right.
Amen, bro.
Right?
Come on, dude. What a word. And I think like you're hitting, bro. It's not typical. You know what I mean? That's not a typical thing that people have that perspective. But I love that you do, and then and the fact that you have that perspective has brought you success. Success in so many different areas. Yeah. And so I think I think it's cool. Living proof of how when you focus on the client's needs and you focus on the team that you have, man, dude, there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was in a seminar and they talked about if you want your brand to grow, invest in your team.
Come on.
The more you invest in your team, naturally your brand will grow. Yeah. And that can be for personal, that can be for a big brand. But yeah, I think with anything in life, anytime you're selfless, right?
Come on.
That's where the real reward comes from. It's not the dollar bills. It's the reward of being selfless and helping others and seeing their joy.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So I know we're totally gonna end, but I want to ask one more question. So that's like completely countercultural. in the idea of like, there's this idea, especially within, the creative industry, where it's like, man, I have to work hard. I have to grind. I have to get, I have to do all this stuff for me, and you're saying, nah, man, success comes from you being able to be selfless.
So check this out. Dreams, or let me put it again in a different way. Goals without routine are dreams.
Come on.
Routine without goals are aimless. And what I mean by that is, I understand people who like to grind and, I'm putting in all the hours and stuff. But always identify your goal. And the reason why I say that, being a father and a husband and, a son also, there's a huge responsibility outside of work that you have.
Right.
And essentially that is your first task. Right?
Right.
So, when you identify your goals, and your goals can not just be like yearly, but it can also be like what you define as successful. Because success is defined by the individual, not by the culture.
Come on, bro.
Right?
Yeah, true.
So what you may think is success to you, a pivotal thing, like to me, it's going to be the complete opposite. Like to me, it's just like, oh, my wife's not working anymore. My son is homeschooled. And I bought a boat that's small.
And he bought a boat, guys.
It's a super small boat. It's a 15-footer little boat. But see, the fact that I'm able to be around my family, and to be a father, to be a husband, to be a son, and to be available, that's my success.
Come on.
To other people, it's like, oh no, I need a beautiful house in Newport,
dollars, man.
And I want like an old school Ferrari, right? Or whatever.
Right.
That's their success. So now what I'm saying to you guys is like, identify what you consider successful.
Interesting.
Once you identify that, make your goals upon that. Then when you grind, you're grinding with purpose.
Right.
You're not aimless, right? So that that every day that you do put in the work, it's adding up to something, meaning there's an end point. You have to have an end point. And the reason why I say you have to is because if you don't, your marriage will suffer. You as a father will suffer. You as a son, you'll suffer. You and your friendships and relationships will suffer. Why? Because you're just grinding to grind.
Right.
There's no end to it, right? So, identify what you consider as an individual successful. Create your goals around that. And what's personally worked for me is there's no such thing as work-life balance for me. It's either family or work. So when I work, my clients and my team know that I'm working, and that my family understands and they're not interrupting, right?
Right.
Same thing as the other side. When it's family time, my team knows, client knows that it's family time, so don't interrupt me. Right? What happens is that both get 100% of you. When you do work-life balance, they're both getting half of you.
Right.
So think about that. Your family, the worst part is like they're only getting 50% of you.
Wow.
Right? And then now your son has a 50% dad. Your wife has a 50% spouse. Your father has a 50% son. Your work has a 50% employee. Right?
Right.
So,
yeah, dude. So, just I feel like taking what you kind of just said and putting it into like just a simple form is like, if you can be selfless in your own life, whether it's personal and work, it applies. Being selfless applies to every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And the grind that like this, again, I was talking about the culture and how it's all like, oh, I have to work really hard because I need to be successful and everything. It's like, no. Like if you can just be selfless and focus on others around you and the customer and the business around you, you'll be successful everywhere.
Absolutely.
Come on.
That wraps it up for sure, man.
Come on. Well, dude, thank you, Gilbert, for being on here and jumping on the first episode of our podcast, or my podcast, I should say. So that's what happens is when I had my old podcast, I always used to say R because it was me and my brothers. But no, truthfully, guys, thanks so much for also listening, wherever you're listening or you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate it. When I was thinking back to like, okay, episode 1, who am I going to have? There was no other person in mind other than Gilbert Gonzalez. Just what a fireman he is. So, guys, we hope you took something, away from today and you guys were encouraged and maybe you learned something new. Do you want to plug anything? I don't know. If you want to, you can.
I mean, like I said, I was really blessed with an awesome team, and it's hard not to mention them. But yeah, like the website is 7styleguides.com. So that's
you're literally wearing the T-shirt right now.
Represent.
Come on, he is representing.
Yeah, so that's the number 7styleguides.com. We're a full service agency. We're faith based.
Come on.
And yeah, we just have a heart to serve. And sometimes it's funny because like we do outreaches, skateboard outreaches and stuff like that. So like when we do stuff, we're like, hey, this is the real work right here.
Come on.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. Cool,
the heart's right.
Come on.
So
amen. Well, thank you guys so much again. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.
Deuces.